The next panel discussion is absolutely filled with lots of insights and stellar panelists. So we'd like all of you to please stay with us and join us in the interactions. We now move on to a highly pertinent discussion on enhancing current cybersecurity, securing the digital future. Our session will be moderated by Mr. Kaushik Pandya, an advisor at the Federation of All India IT Association and co-founder of Kalp Systems. Joining him on the panel are some of the foremost experts in the field, Mr. Phani Mitra B, Global CIO and CDO at Dr. Reddy's Laboratories. Next, we have with us Mr. Sreeji Gopinathan, Director at SKG Advisory and former CIO at Lupin. We are also joined by Mr. Dheeraj Sinha, Executive Vice President and Global CIO at Sun Pharmaceuticals Industries. And last but not the least, welcome on stage, along with all our panelists and moderator, Mr. Sanjay Moralwar, Senior General Manager of IT at Zydus Lifesciences. Can we have our panelists and moderator to join us on stage, please? Ladies and gentlemen, give them a warm welcome. Welcome, gentlemen. Do take a seat on the dais. But it's a free-flowing conversation, so I'm going to leave it over to you, Mr. Pandya, to take the proceedings forward.
Thank you. Very good afternoon to all of you. And very good afternoon to all these people, those who are with years of experience and they've been, keeping their fort all the time, protected by all means. So the agenda today is basically to speak about how to, protect your organizations in respect with cybersecurity, information security, and data privacy, data protection. And we will talk about, all these aspects with different perspectives. In today's world, the four major challenges which we are facing nowadays, that cyber criminals are becoming more and more intelligent. They are becoming so intelligent that they always are staying ahead than the people, those who are trying to protect their fort. The cyber criminals are becoming, they are using the kind of technology which is basically, they are bypassing all the technology. And they have exploits for all the new technologies which are being introduced even today also. So that's another major challenge. The third major challenge which I normally see as a specialist of cybersecurity is that hacktivist movement is becoming very pertinent. People are ready to disrupt your network, your functionality without any motive. Just for the sake of the fun, they are doing it. That's a major challenge. And the rise in the challenges for the supply chain and, critical infrastructure. So these are the major aspects where we are going to talk about. And the entire session is in the form of, I'll speak on certain subjects. I'll talk a few questions to all these gentlemen and seek their insights, which will be very much helpful to all of you and even to me also, because they are definitely the experts in this field. So my first point is basically that modern business practices and the need of remote work. After COVID, we have seen the entire world was living behind firewall. And after COVID, the entire world was on the other side of the firewall. A major challenge. So the remote work have added a parameter of securing OT infrastructure. All of you have experienced that OT and IT are the major aspect of utilizing your pharma, is being utilized in the pharma industry as of now. The need of remotely accessed devices for management and compliance reasons requires the elimination of traditional practices like air gapping. So air gapping is basically, I'll explain you in one sentence, that air gapping is basically, isolating the kind of computers which are being used for OT by isolating the network. It's a different network utilized only for the OT devices, OT IT assets, and that ensures that at least till now it was ensuring that those systems remain safe. But do you feel that even today also this is the kind of a method which are supposed to be used? And I would rather pose this question to Phani and Sanjay bhai. Yeah.
Thanks for having us here. It's good to see a lot of familiar faces here. I think in the pursuit of Alcoa, I think we've all digitized our operations tech in the manufacturing plants. But unfortunately, that has been the biggest point of failure when it comes to cybersecurity. Many of the attacks, even here in India and otherwise, we've had the biggest challenge come through the OT and not as much via the IT. The easiest way was to just not have them connected to any network. But that no longer is the case, because as we look at how the industry has been operating and what we are changing up to now, we have traditionally been known for making more paper than pills in the past. But fortunately, with all the tech that is coming into our manufacturing, we now have a lot of that digitized now. But we no longer can let it just stay outside the larger network, and the need to connect it to the enterprise business environment essentially, becomes that much more critical, and that opens up the attack surface for most of the threat players in that sense. So yes, air gapping still continues to be an important lever for us. I don't think we can do away with it, particularly in places where the OEMs and the equipment manufacturers are still not up to the mark. In those cases, we end up air gapping those applications from the larger network. But increasingly, at least within our organization, and I see it in many of the mature organizations, people are moving to what we call the purview model of cybersecurity. The essential idea being that the level 1, 2, and 3 systems, the ones that you actually have, the PLCs, RTUs, then the elements around historians and other elements, and then the MES systems, at least the 3 levels logically separated with their own network firewall ecosystem. And then a layer in between, which is called the demilitarized zone, the DMZs, layer 3.5 in the model as it is called. That essentially creates a logical separation between the 1, 2, 3 and the 4 and 5, which are broadly what we call as the enterprise applications. So broadly, at least theoretically, that is a logical architecture many of us are moving to. It allows us to still continue to access some of these applications for data, for analytics, AI, ML, all the other cool things, but also keep us protected. So that's one of the ways we are actually thinking about it.
Fantastic. Sanjay bhai.
So very good afternoon to all. So there's a lot of data required for analytics. And this actually requires the operational technology to be implemented. That is the OT networking to be implemented across the manufacturing or the operations area. So there are some good practices which are happening across while we implement such OT networking. My friend Phani has already mentioned about how you can do the segmentation, network segmentation, and still achieve a protection for your crown jewels. So similarly, there are some other practices also, which are very, very basic things which the organizations can keep in mind while ensuring good OT protection. First and foremost is having a comprehensive inventory of the assets. Okay, that is a very basic thing. I should know what are my assets, and once I know what my assets are, I can actually ensure that I reduce the attack surface for any attacker to actually identify vulnerabilities and attack that device. It includes either a hardware, it includes network, it includes softwares also. So that is the basic thing which as a practice an organization can take it up when they are securing their OT network or their OT devices. The second and the other important thing which the organizations can do is actually zero trust. Zero trust means, though these would look or feel like jargons, but zero trust is actually happening. We all in our daily life are also doing zero trust. While zero trust means that I give access to that device or to that application or to that sensor absolutely which is required. I don't give away all the access, right? Which we also ensure, right? When I'm installing an app in my mobile, I know if that app does not require access to my contacts, then I don't give that access to that app. And if it does not install, fine, we don't install that app. So similarly, give zero trust. Then the most important thing is that install that many number of applications or ensure that you have the adequate applications only installed in your OT devices. And there are many other things based on the organization policy and based on the organization point of view. There are many other practices which the organization can install or implement across their OT networking to make it more secure. While air gap was one method used traditionally, but the way the amount of remote access now required both by the OEMs, both by the users, additional to the air gap, there are many other practices which the organizations will have to implement to ensure their OT network is secure.
Very right, very right. So, very nicely said, both the gentlemen. And practically, I would like to add one more thing in this, that every organization should always try to, do a periodical assessment of their IT, OT, and IoT systems on a regular basis, which is probably a cybersecurity posture analysis or a posture assessment, which may help you, in try to understand your gaps, and you can, bridge in those gaps or, fill in those gaps as per your urgency and as per your needs. So moving ahead, the systems which we need to protect are as per a mandate under the cybersecurity norms, that those systems are needed to be updated or patched on a regular manner. And unless we do it, we are not able to bridge the security vulnerabilities which are open into those operating systems or those applications on those systems. So while we do this, we often occur a downtime. And, what would be the effective method to reduce this kind of a downtime? Or what would be the best strategy to mitigate the risks associated with such tasks? This is a very critical question, because when the system on a shop floor goes down for these kind of tasks, it creates a problem to the organizations. I would request Mr. Dheeraj and Sreeji to answer these questions.
Can I go first? Hi, good afternoon, everyone. This is Dheeraj Sinha here. Now, when we talk of patching on the OT devices or the OT operating systems, I think that first of all, there are a lot of complications in terms of upgrading anything as far as OT is concerned. There are a lot of challenges. OEMs may not support. You'll have outdated operating systems, outdated patches, etc. Somewhere it's not even supported. AMCs are not available. So there are a lot of practical challenges in terms of upgrading anything to do with OT. Now, in my previous organization, I come from a steel background where OT was the motherhood statement. In a sense, you have continuous manufacturing, and hence OT and OT protection was one of the key, because it's a very, very high risk area. Now, so we understand as to how to protect OT, what are the things that are needed. Obviously, Phani talked about the layer 2, 1, 2, and 3, and the ability to map, put it in the DMZ zone, get the outside in terms of vendors coming in or the employees coming in, etc. There are tools and technologies that are in place. But there is also a fact that if you cannot do a patch or an upgrade, what is it that you do? So then there are lots of virtual patching, and there are a lot of technologies which are currently available, whether you do it on the network or on the OS itself, to ensure that, for example, if you have an XP or things which are completely outdated and no patches are available. Then also the ability to keep the organization secure. There are multiple strategies that are in place. More than happy to discuss in detail to understand as to what those strategies are. But it is documented, it is available. If you have, you should obviously patch, you should have shadow systems available to be able to patch, test and understand as to whether the patch works, is it still doing the functional requirement that the patch is supposed to deliver and the piece is supposed to deliver. And if yes, then go ahead and patch. Now, the downtime as it's concerned is either have virtual systems which are available, a parallel systems, you can't have it for everything, and hence you need to possibly schedule it well, talk about it, look at an off-production hours, etc., to be able to understand those strategies and how is it that they can work more effectively.
Or you can use those kind of platforms which can push those updates, on while the system is running, even those things are also...
In-place upgrade in place is typically, in a production manufacturing environment, is typically not recommended, according to me. In a sense, you can do it for enterprise systems, etc., but not on the production environment.
Right. Thank you. Sreeji, please.
Yeah, thanks, Dheeraj. Thanks for the question. Good afternoon, or good morning still. Yeah, good afternoon, everyone. As we heard from Sanjay and Dheeraj, one of the first things that we have to start with is to understand the landscape. What is it that we have? What are the different equipments out there, both in the IT and the OT area? First, get that full visibility done, and then there has to be a understanding of risk classification. Which devices are absolutely critical for the operations, where we can afford a downtime, where we cannot afford unplanned downtime. Downtime will always be needed to do the patching. So based on that classification done, then the prioritization of patching has to be done. And it also is important that there is awareness created not just with the IT and the technical community, but with a larger organization, that this is something that the organization has to do. Yeah? So it has to get into the integrated planning exercise of the organization. So the IBP process that we have, right from demand to supply to production planning, actually has to consider this activity as one of the things that needs to be planned. So if that is not done, then there's going to be a push-pull between the IT guys who want to do it and the manufacturing and the quality team who will say, so sorry, I can't give you the downtime. Yeah. So it has to be integrated fully into that plan that we have, so that we know when it is going to happen and what kind of precautions need to be taken. Maybe a little bit extra production need to be done before this actual patching starts, so that even if there is unexpected downtime that is going to come after the patching, we are not going to be impacted from a business point of view. So now, once the risk classification is done and once the patching is to be done, my suggestion is that for the critical systems, there has to be a test bed. Because if you're going to apply that, we don't want any downtime other than the planned downtime. So basically, to minimize that impact, it is very, very important that it is tested thoroughly beforehand before we go and apply it on the production systems. So, so those are some of the precautions that we can take. But the most important point here is that OEMs who supply the machine, who supply the hardware and the software and the embedded systems, I believe, if they are in the room, has to take a lot more ownership in terms of the software roadmap. That they cannot just put the software into the systems and forget about it, and the IT teams will take care forever. We need to have partnership going between the technology teams and the OEMs, so that there is a roadmap in terms of how that software is going to get updated. Like in the IT system, there is a version upgrade that happens, but in these machines, OT devices, machines as well, there has to be a roadmap of software upgrade, so that the patches can be applied in a very similar manner to the IT systems. That is a gap now. So that's one of the requests that I'll have to the OEMs to support us in this.
So Kaushik bhai, one more point where he actually mentioned that there has to be an integrated process. Okay. which includes such requirements also. So actually it should start at the URS. So there has to be a close collaboration between the manufacturing services, quality and IT to ensure the URS includes these things. While quality and operations are contributing on the URS, IT also contributes on the URS, saying that these are the basic things which from the IT protection point of view will have to be performed during the life cycle of that equipment in the organization.
Very right. So
and the OEM has to comply to that, so that the URS comprehensively is obeyed.
True. And probably an announcement of an annual schedule would help a lot to do such exercises. Anyway, moving further, today's environment, cloud is an essential kind of a thing which everybody talks about. So the question here is that is it advisable to move to a cloud environment? And see why the question is, because it comes with a lot of issues like compliances and government norms and these, that, and privacy concerns. So many things, regulations. And the data, when it is moving out of the country, then again you have an issue. All those kind of issues. Is it advisable to move to a cloud, and how do you tackle these kind of issues? I would request Sanjay sir and Dheeraj sir to please answer this.
So I think let's first understand that cloud is a reality. Now, every organization would have a different strategy in terms of how to embrace cloud. What is critical, what is not critical, what is cloud deployable, what is not. What is the criteria for a cloud deployment? A machine or a server or a service that you use occasionally, fixed number of users, when it is there, typically may not be a cloud candidate. Where you need high elasticity, high velocity, etc., it helps to be on the cloud because there are multiple advantages. So I don't see that there's a uniform law as to what needs to go to the cloud and what does not need to go to the cloud. It's based on individual companies' priorities as well. What we have seen over a period of time in manufacturing organization, there's been a traditional preference to be on-prem. And there have again been reasons for them because they are very, very PLC-centric and centric where latency, etc. becomes a big issue. Compliances I'll come to a bit later. So there is no golden rule which says as to what needs to get done. If obviously we need to go to hyperscalers and we need to ensure that the data privacy, and there are lots of now hyperscalers which are complying to all the regulations. Your data localization, you can go to any hyperscaler, and I don't want to name them, but you'll have a EU region, and from a data point of view, you'll see all of them as one entity, and one report will extract that data out for you. So there are multiple methods which are currently available to be able to run on the cloud with privacy, and there are HIPAA compliances, etc. All of them are there on the cloud as well. They are cloud ready from a native point of view. In terms of doability, I think it is a lot of factors like your DR, factors like data governance, etc. There are a lot of things that typically get simplified where you need to put in possibly people behind the setup to be able to ensure that it works. So yes, there are advantages. Yes, it's a reality. And yes, every organization would have a different take and a look on that. But we are moving to the cloud, and we will, as part of the journey, as we see from an industry point of view, embracing it would continue to happen as we
You can't ignore it.
You'll ignore it. You can. It's not that you can't. But then that's not a very prudent decision that you put it there.
Right.
So while I second the thought, okay, so some years back, cloud for our industry would be a myth, but now it is becoming an essential thing. Okay, while organizations in the industry are taking a cautious move towards the cloud, but there are also OEMs who are forcing you to the cloud, right? If at all we find that some software OEM tool is working very good for us, there is a high probability that software OEM forces you to go to the cloud or adopt the cloud because his tool is available on the cloud. So that is one thing. While you see various regulatory authorities also have their guidelines of us to, or as an organization to adopt cloud. Okay, there is ISO 27001, which is a security standards, information technology security standards for the adoption of cloud. Or there is a HIPAA, or there is a, if you say a cloud service provider, then there is a SOC 2 sort of compliance. So these compliances are also in place with reference to how you govern your data, how you ensure data privacy, and again, data privacy is now now it's not a big question because there are also geo methods of adopting data privacy. You can have a hybrid method for that where data specific to your country can be put on premise and data which is available can be put on the cloud. So there are hybrid approaches also available. Then the second thing which you need to also keep in mind is the SLAs. To protect your interest, you can define SLAs with your cloud service provider. You can also properly understand what are the joint responsibilities so that there is no gray area left when you are defining your SLAs or you are defining your SLAs to your internal users. And then you do proper encryption of your data so it is protected while it is getting transferred from your premise to the cloud or it is at rest at the cloud. So that is also one practice which you can follow. And the third and the fourth most important thing is that you define a proper data loss policy, what is acceptable to the organization, and a recovery, the application recovery policy which is acceptable to the organization. In technical terms, it would be called recovery point objects and recovery time objects. And that will actually ensure the availability of the application to your organization. And on the cloud, that is very well possible to happen.
Well, thank you. Thank you so much, sir. One of the most important questions is ransomware. All of those who are present in this hall must be knowing something about the ransomware, and it is one of many, as per the many surveys, ransomware is the 70 to 80% of the cyber crimes which are happening worldwide. There are ransom gangs active, and the ransomwares are deployed worldwide, as a worldwide attack. And there are pharma industry centric attacks which has happened also in the past. So my request to Sreeji and to Phani to please, give your insight to the audience about how to handle this menace.
Okay, just like Dheeraj said, cloud is reality. The fact that threat actors are out there and ransomware is an attack mechanism is also a reality. I don't think, probably a couple of years ago, 3-4 years ago, there were organizations who probably hoped and prayed that we are not being attacked. That is not the case anymore, right? Every organization is being attacked on a daily basis. So you talk to any CIOs here or CISOs, you will hear that there are hundreds of attacks happening on our networks on a daily basis. Now, that is reality. So on one hand, the security organization is fighting a war. And on the other hand, we need to make sure that the business has to run smoothly. So this is a balancing act that we have to do. Now, in terms of the preparedness of the Indian pharma companies, I think we are in a much better position compared to a 2020 or a 2021 scenario. There have been tools and processes and mechanisms deployed across the organization to have layers of army in the organization to fight that war. Now, it could be in the form of endpoint devices protection. There are softwares mechanisms where you can continuously monitor these endpoint devices to see what is actually going on there. Is there any risk? There are tools and mechanisms to see whether there are lateral movements happening within the network. There are tools and mechanisms to protect your perimeter across the organization to see whether some intrusion is happening. Now, ransomware usually happens by two mechanisms. One is through the emails that you get, the phishing and the wishing, where you go and click, the software gets downloaded. Then there is something called delivery by payload, which has gone down significantly because we have very good protection mechanisms on the perimeter where the attackers are not going to just be easily finding ways in. Okay, so it's primarily the phishing and the wishing links that we get in our systems. So in addition to all the actual tools and mechanisms that we have deployed, the most important one is the people itself. It is the most important, but it is also the weakest link. Okay, so hence it is very important to make sure that there is a continuous effort to raise that awareness within the organization, right from bottom to up and from top to bottom. So the leadership has to talk about this on a regular basis, not just in conference calls or town halls, but in the department meetings when you casually have conversations, how serious it is for each and every person in the employee to have a zero trust mechanism when it comes to emails that you get, the links that you get, whether it is a device, whether it is a laptop, whether it is somewhere else that you are accessing. It could be a kiosk as well, right? So I can't emphasize the importance of raising this awareness so that people apply caution before they click on something that they receive. Even if it looks like an email from a legitimate source, before you click, think twice. Yeah. So we have also heard about the video call that happened a couple of months ago, where it was actually a CFO of the organization and a couple of other people from the actual organization in a video call using the deepfake mechanism, talking to a person in the accounting department and telling them that this many millions of dollars have to be transferred. So that's the world that we are living in. You will see a person on the other side doing a video call looking exactly like your CFO or your MD or whoever it is, telling you that you should be doing it. But please apply caution. When unusual requests come, go and physically check before you take action.
Very right. So, Phani, your comments on this?
Yeah, I think I just wanted to add how and why this is relevant even for some of the quality folks and the manufacturing folks in the room to understand some of this, right? Because just like a QAMM or any other methodology that we follow, it's important for an organization to have a methodology to assess themselves on where they are when it comes to cybersecurity. We internally use a pretty popular framework called the NIST Cybersecurity Assessment Framework. Allows you to understand a bunch of things that our colleagues here covered. One on identifying and protecting the devices. The second, the third part on detecting any threats that are coming in. Sreeji talked about it. And more importantly, as an organization, are we prepared to respond and recover from that attack? So I think it's extremely important to think of all the 5 elements of identify and protect, detect, and then respond and recover, and check ourselves against our own internal maturity on where we are. This is important. The second key element is in 3 broad buckets of internal awareness of how aware are we in terms of cybersecurity, ability to understand what are the risks and how they're coming in from. But we've also seen a significant value when we simulate an attack, either through partnerships with white hat hackers or any other partnerships to simulate or create these war game equivalents where you ask a friendly threat player to actually come and capture a trophy. And when you do those kind of games, war games, and which is very popular in the military and in the defense sector, we don't do that very often, but cybersecurity is no less than a war. So in that sense, if you simulate and have these war games, identify your own weak spots, we're going to work on protecting them. So that's again a very, very important method that I've seen work. The third and last but not least is the partnership with the government, with other peer groups. Particularly, for instance, the government of India helps us set up these honeypots, and understand what kind of traffic is coming into our networks and actively report and prevent some of these things from coming in. So internal partnerships or war game simulation, and the third element of talking to people, around you, because we are not alone in this war.
True, very true. So, training your entire organization on how the phishing attacks takes place and how to get protected against those kind of phishing attacks on a regular basis. These kind of trainings on a regular basis are a must nowadays, and one should be, every organization should be practicing those things on a periodical basis very regularly. So, thank you, gentlemen, for giving that insight. Moving ahead, in the interest of time, I'm skipping one or two, stages which are already answered in your questions. So, my major concern, or rather the question to all of you are basically, anyone can, any two of you can answer this in the interest of the time, that we do not have any information, we as India do not have any such information security or cybersecurity standards other than DPDP 23, which has been introduced and yet not floated. It is just an introduction. So, how do you see a need of a standard which are designed for Indian environment? So, if somebody can, throw a light on that.
Yeah. So, do we have something? Yeah, DPDP 2023 is one of the acts that has come. Before that also we had the IT Act 2000, and there is also a
amendment in 2013.
Yeah, 2013 also was there. And the DPDP Act is very similar to some of the already mature acts which is out there like GDPR or California Act, but there are differences as well, right? Now, one example where there is a difference is in GDPR, there is a right to forget, right?
True.
So here we have something similar, but it is actually not right to forget fully, right? So there are nuances on how DPDP Act will be implemented in India. We'll wait and see how that is going to come out. Now, I think as of now, there is no real enforcement that is happening, but if you look at most of the organizations that is sitting here, we are not just doing business in India. We are doing business across the globe. So we are already looking at the standards which is being mandated by the rest of the globe, and hence we have prepared our systems, processes accordingly. So if we are creating a solution in India, even then we go and make sure that the DPO, the data privacy officer from Europe or from the US is involved, so that we are actually taking that solution to the standard where it can be deployed globally. If it is not going to be deployed today, it's going to be deployed tomorrow anyway, right? So from that point of view, the preparedness of most of the organizations in the India pharma industry that you will see, they know how to execute this. They know how to go after this and happen. So the task that will be cut out for us will be when the DPDP Act finally comes out as an enforcement, we need to understand what are the nuances, what are the differences. Is there any specific thing that we need to now start working on? So there was one point where we had to localize the data in the country, right? I mean, in my mind, it's a little counterproductive if every country mandates that the data has to be localized. It's going to be unnecessary, storage and hosting that we will have to do in multiple countries. Now, there are solutions where you look at what is the data pertaining to your particular legal entity in your country, and you kind of port that out into a local storage. But, we are in an interconnected world where I believe, we need to be able to figure out ways without having this localization requirement. How do you protect it? Those kind of lobbying and influencing is happening as we speak before that final act is coming out as well. But, I don't think it is far away, for probably a few months away, where your question about whether we have it or not, I think we have it already. Companies have already prepared it, but the enforcement will happen pretty soon.
Yeah, so with reference to guidelines and with reference to any regulation, okay, while we all await the definitions, okay, when I spoke to some government consultants, they said that yes, that is an act which is enacted, but there will be clear definitions which will be given to the organizations to follow. While that happens, it is also necessary that there are some basic hygiene things which we need to do. Okay, as an organization, we need to carry out. So those are while following the normal standards like an ISO 27001. We also spoke about the NIST standards. There are some 93 controls within ISO 27001 which we can assess and see how they apply to our organization and adopt them. The most important thing which the industry now needs to see is that there is a lot of digitalization which is happening. So there will be information security, cyber security across the life cycle of this digitalization. So it is necessary that it is incorporated in the entire life cycle of the digitalization. So you are ensuring that at the base itself you are following the standards while you implement any digitalization project. So we currently have to wait for the definitions to be declared, so that will help us to precisely adopt the DPDP Act.
So, in continuation to this particular thing, I would like to add one more thing to Sanjay bhai, you and to Phani, that pharma companies are managing huge data, which are basically, probably personal data or user data or even the all sorts of data which you normally have, and with the implementation of DPDP Act, would you like to elaborate to the audience that how that effect will happen to all of them? Whenever it is going to take place. I believe that in the next month, the government will roll out the guidelines to roll out DPDP Act, because they were waiting for the new government to take place, and that has already happened. So I believe that it will be rolled out in the by the end of month of July. So how do you suggest to the audience about taking care of that data?
So I think the Act, based on what we have seen in the latest version, is reasonably clear too. As Sreeji covered pretty much a lot of elements in there. I think we need to look at data. The biggest challenge that most of us have is understanding where our data lies, because there are so many places our teams are collecting data across various applications. I think it's very important to have a clean data governance model in place inside the organizations to first understand what are the applications, what kind of data are we covering, which part of it is PII or PHI. Again, a lot of times we are doing innovative experiments where we are actually collecting or connecting to consumer data as well in some places, and so on. So I think the ability to understand what is PII, what is PHI, and a very clean understanding of that is going to be extremely critical. And both in terms of being a data principal, processors, and the jargon around it is extremely important for all of us in the organizations, at least the leadership levels, to understand these fundamental vocabulary very correctly. And that plays the second most important role. There has always been a bit of a push-pull on the extent of data that we need to capture and process to the business outcomes that we are delivering. And that has actually been the biggest differentiating point between how a China treats it, how a US treats data privacy, and how a Europe treats data privacy. Particularly close to my heart is a lot of advancements when it comes to machine learning models like federated learning and other elements where you can still hold the privacy of the data in place and continue with the business outcomes that you want to achieve. So it's important that leaders, both business leaders as well as the tech leaders, understand that it can be managed. It's something that we are used to, to what Sreeji said. Data governance and data privacy is not very new to us, particularly because of GDPR. So I think we'll be okay.
Anything to add, Sanjay?
Yeah, so the first and foremost thing is that let us all understand that as organizations or as the industry, we know, right, because of our presence across the globe. In the industry, India pharma industry being present across the globe. So the industry knows, or the organizations know, what privacy, data privacy and data privacy protection means. Okay, so probably all the organizations would some or the other practice, will be having some of the other practice, right? The most important thing is that, again here, asset, okay, knowing the assets of data, where privacy data is there within the organization, with the DPDP Act is the most important thing. Then, knowing the stakeholders of those data is another most important thing. The third thing is that we have to collect data, right? Organizations do various campaigns, marketing campaigns, vaccine campaigns. We have to collect data. Most important thing is that you collect absolutely required data. So then your responsibility of protecting that is around that area only. If you don't require to collect the privacy data, please don't collect that privacy data at all. Then the most important thing is the retention of that data. If you know that data is not absolutely useful to you, write down a policy and delete that data, so that your surface of protecting the data reduces. That's the most important thing. And within the organization also, if you require to mask data, you should mask data. Like the HR generally requires to collect an Aadhaar card information. Now, within the organization, should the HR be able to see the Aadhaar card? No. We don't even give our Aadhaar card numbers or our full Aadhaar card number to a reception at the hotel, right? We give a masked Aadhaar card. Similarly, wherever absolutely data is not required to be exposed, mask the data. So those are some key, very simple things which organization can follow to, and the most important thing is that have a clear intent of implementing all what you want to implement.
As well as the identification of the data.
So the intent also helps you when an organization would face some incident, the intent that you wanted to protect the data is also a clear indication to the authority that yes, you wanted to protect, but that happened.
So one of the very important further question is that I'm posing it to all of you, that pharma companies are, working with a large complex network of dealers and distributors and, partners and their vendors and providers and so many things. So how a supply chain would be affected in case, and how are you going to, handle the supply chain questions in relevance with cybersecurity, information security, as well as data privacy?
So, if you look at the actual layout of the land where the attack surface is there is IT, estate, then there is a OT estate, and then currently we have the industrial IoT estate as well, where devices might be installed on patients or maybe in the shop floor, and then we have the supply chain. Now, in most organizations, you will see the IT is quite mature. Most of the organizations have taken the right steps to protect it. OT, we already discussed. There are challenges. Maturity has improved significantly, but there's a lot more to do. Now, the other part where there is a significant risk sitting is supply chain, what we just discussed. The number of partners that we deal with, whether it is distributor, vendor, other partners, whatever it is, it's a high number. Now, not everybody may not be at the right maturity or the standards that you want to follow. Now, you cannot go and enforce this for everybody as well. With the big guys, maybe you can. Now, how do you manage this? If you think about it in a simple manner, it is actually providing access. Now, how do you control that? Once you have provided access, how do you monitor? How do you control that? And then take action if something goes wrong. So, when it comes to access management, basic access, what needs to be given to people, okay, you need to give. Privileged access for certain people to take certain actions, especially for partners, don't give it permanently. It's called just-in-time access management. You give the access where it is, when it is needed, can be managed in a dynamic manner, and then the access is going off once that action is done, right? And it can be for a support for a shop floor equipment from a OEM. It can be a supplier wanting to post something into your system, okay? And there can be a process that can be automated for the privileged access to be given. Now, once that is done, then you have to continuously monitor what is the activity that is going on using all of those access. And over time, you can understand user to actual activity correlation. So there are behavioral platforms that is now out there where you can capture you call it the UEBM, user and event behavior management, right? And whenever there is a deviation from that expected behavior,
you
there is
get
an
an
alert.
alert,
There
yes.
is an alert generated. And you need to have the triangulation and then action taken. So this is how you need to manage it. And again, there is buy-in needed from multiple stakeholders to have this implemented properly. But it is something that needs to be done.
Thank you. Any other comments? Any other suggestions?
No, I think Sreeji has laid it out very well. The only comment that I would have is the boundaries of the organization are long gone. Every employee, partner, supplier, ecosystem, everyone is the same as far as security is concerned. All of them need to access.
Very right.
Whether from internal or from outside, but all of them need to access it. Now, that's where the challenge comes in terms of how do you ensure the posture, etc., what Sreeji was talking about. So UEB, etc., there are multiple sets, but I think most importantly, the ability to do zero trust. Even if I come in and say I want to access a second OTP form which is of access, then what are the systems that I am permitted to access? It's not a horizontal that once you've accessed, all applications are available to you. So there are multiple layers of technology which is now available, which allows and permits you to nuance your security posture and still service a remote person coming in from any second place to do an OEM remote installation of any OEM machine. So I think we need to look at holistically, both for internal people as well as for outside. How do I give access to people from a remote? How do I control, as Sreeji was saying? How do I ensure that I monitor? Now, all these are simply said. The ability to monitor by exception is again a challenge and an art that we need to unsolve, resolve, etc., to be able to understand as to how to go about doing it. But the only view that I have is technologies are now available to be able to ensure that we get slightly more secure than the current posture that we have currently.
Very well said, sir. So it's time to take questions from the audience on whatever the insights have been given by a gentleman there.
Hi, I'm Ravi Shankar from Sun Pharma. One of the pain point, attack is inevitable. As you're rightly stating, it's a dynamic state. Considering that recovery and restoration of the entire set of data is most important part. So what are the policies, or how do you ensure that to the level of 100%? It's not possible, we understand, but yes, that's the main point.
With the minimal downtime also,
That's very important. That's very important. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. What can you control? That you control, right? What you cannot control, you can't control. So you have systems, you need to make sure the backups are taken appropriately. You define the criticality of the systems, and then you define what is RTO and RPO, recovery time and recovery point objectives are. And according to that, then you need to have a daily rigor to make sure that plan is being executed. And not only rigor, it is tested. On a regular basis as well. This is where most organizations probably falter, right? We go till the rigor and make sure the backups are happening, but then testing it on a regular basis, kal dekha jayenge, aaj koi aur kaam hai. Okay, so that has to go into the planning. And that is where we can make sure that we can get as close as possible to the 100%. Now, 100%, as you said, may not be possible because there is a recovery time objective that we have defined. Now, after that backup is done, if some business activity has happened, it is not there in the backup. So you're not going to get it. Now, there are hot backups possible, right? If it is a super critical application, continuous backup is also possible. But then it has its own risk. If there is a continuous backup, then backup is online. So if there is an attack happening, it will affect the backup also.
Affect, yes.
Okay. So, the rigor is what is needed for this.
Yeah,
True.
Thank you.
And analysis says that there are only below 10% people, those who really, take care about daily practices of backing up and testing it for the restoration, below 10%. So I would rather advise all of you to, keep this practice.
So the most important exercise which every organizations have to do is that restoration exercise. Because it is necessary that you test your backup.
True.
Your backup logs may tell you that the backup has happened, but when you actually restore, it is possible that the backup may not work because it is finally a magnetic media. So with reference to traditional backups and restorations, there are solutions also available where you do a replication, and the replication of data between your primary server and your secondary server allows you to reduce the data loss. Okay, you can't achieve zero, but you can achieve near zero.
Other than this, possibly one of the other thought processes also is, how do I reduce the number of instances? If you have server running across all your 31 plants, and you could have centralized them and run it on through one server. So there are lots of strategies to be able to deploy, and possibly as part of the structure, we need to ensure that we reach if not 100, at least for critical systems, roughly around 100% backup, other than the RPO.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Any
my
other
question
questions?
is that maybe within this audience itself, 2 to 5% people may be knowing some SME expert comments and discussion among you. So, because the IT is sitting somewhere else, IT SMEs are taking care, quality may include 1 or 2 IT, they only check audit trails and other stuff. So, how you are partnering with the quality and engineering and not running in silos, and whether you have run any constructive program within your organizations to give basic education and training to quality manufacturing and engineering.
So
Fantastic question. Sorry.
Sreeji, one more. I understand this question is posed in reference with the SMBs and SMEs. Basically, those who are not large corporates. So that is the way you will have to address it. Yeah?
No, I think it might sound like I am coming back at you, but partnership is both ways. Yeah, so I'm not trying to be funny, but this is true. Include the IT guys as part of your team. Wherever they are sitting, doesn't matter. And as much as IT guys want to partner with you, please make sure you are partnering with them. Include them. That's the only way. One hand clapping is not going to make a sound.
So maybe sometimes little, you always understand. We are quality professionals. We may not understand many technical aspects in terms of cybersecurity, ransomware. So already there are few organizations sitting over here. They have already gone in that trap. They have already suffered badly. So IPA is planning some of the booklets like good engineering practices to guide at least basic things to quality professionals.
I think it's a good suggestion. If you ask me, it's a very good suggestion. Many of us do that in the organizations where we actually do awareness campaigns across all, run some more advanced versions of programs called digital translators, so the additional things that we end up doing. But I think it's a great suggestion to actually put some of that out in the public so that pretty much everybody via IPA can access at least the basic awareness around this. Yeah.
So I have a suggestion to IPA that you should be coming out with a kind of a set of policies, which is basically, deriving an IT policy with having sub-policies on at least the essential parts of it. Yeah, we can definitely do that.
So one more thing, that this is actually people, process and technology. So protection happens from the people point of view also. Maximum attacks have generated or have happened or have initiated from the people only. So it is necessary that organizations frequently train their employees on cybersecurity. Basic things, very basic things. Like we discussed, that bringing in awareness to an employee on whether to click or whether not to click a hyperlink. There may be some good hyperlink coming to any employee. So these trainings are the most important thing which the organizations can do to ensure that there is a partnership.
And we have seen it work when we gamified it. For instance, we used to have this thing called Quality the Cybersecurity Sentinel, about somebody who just reported an incident that has prevented an attack in some way. And said, we kind of used to, send a big email to the entire company thanking them and all of that. So it certainly helps to gamify it and encourage it.
there can be regular cybersecurity awareness campaigns running into your organizations at least twice in a year. That will help your employees to understand the latest trends and latest practices, and which can, at least save you to a level where, the damage would be the minimal.
See, my other point is even training needs to impact behavior. Now, if the training does not impact behavior, the training will not help. You can have as much of training, but if you post your password because you have a list of them on your notice board for easy access, you can have all the awareness in the world, but it will not help. So I think enough trainings are being done in the organization. What we need to understand is how to influence behavior. And that's something that's a gap that's missing that we need to work on to understand how to influence it much better.
Right. Any further questions? Yeah. No, can you repeat it?
Sir, do we have a stringent regulatory system in place? What is required and what is the enforcement level? Any perspective on that?
No, there are standards available, and you will have to enforce those standards into your organization. We've already talked about that. But you will have to deploy those standards into your organization, like what you are doing. ISO 9001 is a QMS system. The same way you can deploy ISO 27001, which is a information security management system. So you can deploy these kind of different standards, and if you do not want to deploy a standard, specifically ISO standard kind of a thing, there are a lot of assessments available from various companies which can at least, give you a perfect idea about your cybersecurity posture in specific time, in relevance with your present time assessment, and it can give you a gap analysis. Then you can work on the gaps and mitigations and risk mitigations and all those kind of things. So very well can be adopted.
The enforcement.
I think we need to close this. Any further questions, probably you can take it while having lunch.
Right, sir.
Thank you, gentlemen. Ladies and gentlemen, give a big round of applause to our panelists and our moderator. Thank you for that lovely session.